Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to Coffee Can't Fix Everything. This is a show where we talk about mental health over a cup of coffee. But before I get into this conversation with a fellow podcaster, I want to give a shout out to both of our homie.
Yes.
Larry Twitty Jr. for supporting and buying me a coffee. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Now, if you think there's value in this show and you love the support, buy your boy coffee. The link will be, I think I had a little QR code on the video. Link will be in the description. Buy me a coffee. You know, tariffs is crazy out here. This is $5 coffee, so I need
we need all the help we
that
can
$5. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for rocking with me today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I was already on your podcast, so
Yes.
Before we get into the conversation, I really want the audience to know a little bit about you and why the conversation we're about to have is pretty relevant. So tell me a little bit about yourself, what, go in for me.
Yeah, so name's Emili Johnson. So I am a born and bred Des Moinean, born and raised here, been right here my whole life. I did move for a little bit. I moved for about 9 years where I traveled the country and worked a few different jobs, and so that was fun. But I've been back here in Iowa since 2018, so almost, what is that, 9 years now?
Yep.
Something like that, crazy?
Yep,
Probably
7,
not.
8 years.
7, 8 years, okay. My math is terrible. But yeah, so born and raised right here, decided to move back after traveling, working in education, and I have a podcast. So my podcast is called Black Girl Iowa. I started I started working on the podcast March of 2024, launched in June of 2024, and I have since wrapped up my first season. So I have shared and posted 36 episodes, 8 of which have been solo. All of the rest have been interviews with some just amazing people here in Des Moines that are just really giving back to the community through knowledge, through assistance, through every aspect. And I really wanted an opportunity to share Black stories here in Iowa. With me traveling, with me having family on the East Coast, I always hear, wait, there are Black people in Iowa? And I'm just like, okay, so who didn't go to history that day when the Great Migration was talked about after Reconstruction and the Civil War? Like, who didn't go to class? But yeah, so I've always felt like Black Iowans were always on like the island of misfit toys, because like
that's so funny.
we can't be like, oh, I'm from Chicago, I'm from Atlanta, I'm from New Orleans or New York or Cali, North Cali, SoCal. No, like I'm from Des Moines. Like that didn't even sound cool. So I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to share stories, and then I also had the opportunity to share my own. So
yes, and that's where I was going to go, because you give voice to a lot of people and a lot of things that they're doing. Mm-hmm. But my question to you is, when was the last time that you really felt like you were seen, felt like you were heard for you?
To be honest, like, I just turned 39 in March, and I haven't really had that feeling.
Man.
And it's okay, you know. I feel like when you grow up here in Des Moines and you understand at the very young age what the prioritization of whiteness is, you kind of really learn how to elevate people that deserve to be elevated, right? Mm-hmm. So honestly, I didn't really start to feel seen until like I did my podcast. And I can't even say that has made me feel seen. I think for me, doing my podcast, it's really been like a love letter to myself, just because I've always felt so isolated and different. Because of where I'm from, because, it's like you're trying to fit in, and sometimes, especially growing up, I'm a what did my nephew call me? I'm a geriatric millennial, apparently. But
these kids is just mad disrespectful.
Listen, we could have a whole podcast about how disrespectful my nephews are, and not recognizing my age.
Yeah,
we really could. But growing up in the 90s, being an 80s baby, growing up in the 90s, there were a lot of times where the only place I felt like I could really be myself was within my four walls of my room. You know what I mean? Even going to school, it was just like I have to put up that I'm tough, that I'm smart, that I'm this, that I'm better, faster, stronger than everybody else, especially the white kids. You know what I mean? So I think with me doing the podcast, it was kind of one of those moments where I always knew that there was something that I wanted to say. I just didn't know the avenue at which to say it. And so when the whole thing, how the podcast came about was I did a project for the Iowa State Conference on Race and Ethnicity, where I actually reached out to all of my friends and I asked about how they all sought validation growing up here. And it was a fantastic presentation that I gave, great research, and there was a white lady, and I had said in the follow-up, I said, ultimately, I want to create a safe space for Black women to tell their stories. I just don't know what it looks like yet. And this white lady said, well, what about all women? And after I gave myself a migraine from rolling my eyes, I immediately said, that's not going to happen until white women can actually understand that they're not the center of the universe and learn how to uplift stories of other women and their experiences. And so I really thought I was going to get in trouble for that, too. Because the way I said it showed that I was like, that got on my nerves. And I mean, like, I'm a Pisces, I'm a passionate person, but then I'm also kind of a jerk. So it's just one of those things where I remember just in the car and I'm driving home, and instead of me being excited about what I just did, I was just mad about that comment. And I just kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about it. And by the time I got home, I was on my laptop searching podcasting and trying to understand, what do I need to do to elevate this voice? What do I want to call this? Who do I want to talk to? What is all of this going to look like? What's the purpose? And then from there, Black Girl Iowa was born.
Man, I love that story because there's something about when. Let me acknowledge a couple things with that story. One, there's something about something pissing you off that just lights a fire to get the thing going, right? Like you could have been, I should do a podcast for years and just been cool, nothing happened, like, I could do it, and nothing happened, and then it could be something that can, as little as someone saying you're never going to do it, or as big as someone saying that, right?
Yeah.
And like, watch. Watch what happens.
Watch me do work.
Watch me do work.
Yep.
And the other thing that I appreciate about that story was not only were you doing it for like other people, but you're also able to get your voice out too. And I've been podcasting for 5 years, and for the first 4, I was safe because I was doing an interview podcast. I felt safe.
Yeah.
But what I realized, I did one solo episode. And I realized, people do want to hear what I have to say. And that was scary. I didn't feel good about it. It's really interesting. So to touch on your point, once podcasting kind of became more normalized, and I started listening to a bunch of different ones about sports, pop culture, and all these different things. I've always wanted to do a podcast. I didn't know what to talk about. Right.
And it was in the same field of, I got to find a niche. I'm just going to, and then when I started this, I'm going to interview people and tell their stories. And in doing that, I put my story on the back burner. And so my mentor, Courtney Perry, she owns Lady Like Sets of Candles. Courtney. Yeah, shout out to Courtney. I love her.
Who's a beast in her own right.
Man, listen.
Talk about it.
Listen. And I think the thing I love about Courtney is all you have to do is send her a text and say, hey, can we talk?
Yep.
And then we talking. But in one of my last mentor meetings with her, she said, Emili, you need to start telling your story. And she kind of yelled at me a little bit. And I just had to receive it.
But you gotta, people have to, I wish I could call Courtney and say, hey, can I just show a picture of you on the podcast so people can see the intimidation of that?
Well, and it's crazy because I don't even know if it's intimidation.
It's just strong. It's just there's a strength to her.
Exactly.
That you're like, oh, she's not playing.
And I remember, and the thing is, thinking back on that moment, as I'm currently working on season 2, is her saying that to me reminded me of how my big sister used to come at me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my big sister is no longer with us. And so when Courtney said that to me, and at first I was like, whoa, hey. And then I was like, you're right, though.
Yeah.
Because she had asked me, she said, how many solo episodes did you do this year in your first season? And I said, I did 8. And she said, you really think that told your story? Now look, you know, but at the same time, it's like, but I'm elevating everyone's story.
Yeah.
And she says, no, Emily, you know, you've been doing YouTube for years. You know, you have all of this experience. You've lived all over the country. You come from an amazing family. You need to start telling your story. And so now I'm in this current process right now where I'm really trying to understand where my story is now and how I got here. And how I'm doing that is through a lot of journaling. A lot of, I'm trying to get some alone time, but as soon as the sun decided to pop out, all of a sudden everybody want to go do something.
Man.
But also, even through therapy, you know,
Man.
and just really starting to talk about those things and understanding that while not everyone needs to know every nook and cranny of my life, there are parts of my life that I do want to share on this podcast, because as much as this is a protected space for Black women, it's also a protected space for me.
Yeah, I love that. And there's something about, I don't journal. I know I should. I'm also in therapy. My therapist has also suggested that. And as we're talking, as we're talking, and I'm thinking about, you know, what you're saying is like, I need to find my voice as well. Like I'm like, okay, how do I find my voice? And finding my voice is through talking, through writing, through going to therapy.
Yes.
Right? Therapy, man, has been a game changer for how I view my voice. How I view my voice. Like there was a time, and it was mostly not mostly. It was a survival tactic in the workplace where I would light my voice. All the stuff to do to make people feel safe around me. And it was draining.
Yeah.
It was draining. And through therapy, like the bass is out, and it's okay. Like I need to. I'm finding my voice by not changing the inflection in my voice. Only when I'm talking to my mama, because I gotta be respectful.
Man.
Look, there's certain people.
Certain people you gotta be like, whoa, wait, take the voice out. Take the bass out.
Take the bass out.
Take it out.
Real quick. Yeah, real quick. I can do it real quick.
Yep.
But I say all that to say,
100%.
There's something about the act of doing to find your voice. And it sounds like you're doing that right now.
Yeah, and you know, it's, again, a lot of these things that I've been doing, not necessarily going to therapy, because I've been in therapy on and off for the last 18 years, you know? And, you know, through therapy, realizing, you know, that I have high anxiety, I have depression, you know, and that I also have premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So it's almost like I have a chemical imbalance to where a normal woman will PMS for 10 days. I PMS for like 20. And so my emotions, everything in me is heightened at some times. And so I'm on medication to even regulate it. And in doing that for a long time, it was like, I'm strong enough to do this on my own.
Right.
But it wasn't until I started taking the medication, I started going to therapy after my diagnosis, and I started to really understand where I was. And it was like I had just been white knuckling it for 10 years. And so now that I'm 5 years later, I'm a lot more calm, and I can sit and I can journal and I can really understand what it is, and I don't feel so flustered, but I also don't feel so pressured. I
Right.
don't feel like I have to get everything done all at once. I don't feel like I am doing too much. And it's those pieces of my story that a lot of people don't know about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I've never talked about my diagnosis openly before,
Right.
but it's there. You know what I mean? And so I feel like once I got centered and I got comfortable, then it's like I can literally sit in my apartment and write for 30, 45 minutes to an hour, and have 15 pages done. And I'm
Really?
just, and everything in my head is just coming out onto the paper.
Man,
You know?
how do you feel after? I've heard people say, like, mind you, I don't know, I've never done it, but I've heard people say after they've released that, there's a sense of just relief and like just like. I had one person tell me like they have this happiness like after they get done, like they're so happy after they've written everything out.
You know, it's a mixture of feelings. Because sometimes, like the other day, I'm not going to tell y'all what I wrote about because that's my business.
That's mind your
But
business.
I have a tendency to write about my day and write about everything going on. And then it was almost like the pen just started to tell the truth for me. And by the time I stopped, I looked, I said, I haven't even said that out loud before. You know? But I feel like what happens for me when I write is that I start to feel this peace, and then almost like I go into like a Zen mode. And the only thing that is gonna kind of help keep me grounded is to keep writing it all out. And I understand, you know, journaling isn't for everyone.
Right.
I'm a huge proponent of it. I did an episode on it last year. I'm looking to do another episode. Plus, I'm working on another thing. I'm not going to talk about it yet.
Okay.
But I just feel like a lot of people think that, you know, in order to journal, you need to have the right notebook, the right pen, the right atmosphere. You know, you need to have the cozy aesthetic and all of this other stuff. You really don't. You can come in a coffee shop. You can write in your car. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. That's literally it. And I feel like there's nothing that you are supposed to write about. You just have to write about what you feel.
Right.
And, you know, and I feel like for a lot of people that can't get started, but they want to do it, you know, using journaling prompts or, you know, one exercise that I've done is my therapist told me, and this was a therapist I had years ago, told me to, if I go somewhere to journal or I'm at home, focus on one thing and talk about that. You know, so it could be, you know, a tree outside or a sound that you hear or, you know, talking about the cup of coffee you drink and how you like your coffee. And then next thing you know, you're writing it down how you love coffee. And then you're talking about how your coworker pissed you off because they took the last glazed donut. You know what I mean? Like everything just kind of happens because you start to relax, you start to let go, and you just start to let the pen flow.
Right. And you know what? I will say I've done a form of journaling. Like I do this thing where, and it's mostly when I'm, I've been in my creative artist bag lately, right? Like I'm like, but that's who I've always been.
Yeah.
But now through therapy, I'm like, you know, I can actually say this is who I'm supposed to be, and I'll get on my my memo app on my phone and I'll just start talking about creative and like talking it through and getting it out and just having that recording.
Yeah.
And then I can listen back to it or refer back to it or whatever. And I go back. Sometimes I go back and listen to like what my ideas were from like 2022.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that, and be like, oh my gosh, that was really interesting what I was thinking back then. But like, so I kind of do something similar. I'm just not writing down on pen and paper.
Yeah, and again, you know, there are so many different ways to journal. You know, you can, just like what you did, voice memos. I know people that do video journals. You know, and they literally would just open up their laptop, sit in front of their camera, and they'll just talk.
That would be an interesting
You know
project.
what I mean? And again, there are so many different ways to organically do this. I mean, there have even been times for me when I've been in a writing slump, I'll do the same thing. You know, now I don't know if I want to watch those back because I was doing that right around the time I got divorced. So pretty sure it's a lot of crying.
This is deep.
But those are deep cuts.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, like there's so many different ways to do it, and I just wish, especially as Black people, especially as Black men, especially as Black women, right now, I really want us to start getting more in touch with ourselves
Man,
and with what it is, with what we need, and how it's not even that how we're going to survive, because I feel like I hate the term survival mode, but I also feel like I'm in it sometimes.
Right.
But it's just, how are we going to maintain? You know, because I feel like when you maintain, it's like you're doing things at your own pace, and then you can add things in or remove them as you need. Right now, it is every day is something different.
Yep.
Every day is something different. Like, I think even today in Iowa, they just made another sweeping vote that is, again, decimating DEI once again.
Yep.
You know, and hearing that news is really frustrating, but I also feel like, you know, because a lot of us aren't protesting, because a lot of us aren't kind of getting that ingrained in a lot of things, it's just like, well, how am I going to take that time that I would be going out to do those things to put it back into me? You know, instead of, you know, being on social media for an hour and ranting and raving about this, what could I do with that hour that's going to put life back into me?
Okay, we're going there.
Yeah, let's go.
Like,
I'm already there. I'm cozy.
because so, and, you know, I've been thinking a whole lot about this, and so I'm going to try to put it in the terms of kind of the topic of the conversation, in the sense of wanting to be heard, wanting to be seen, but who are the ones that are listening? Like, I want to be heard, but is anybody listening? And I think when we're talking specifically about some of the injustices that are smacking us in the face left and right, I know we hear them and we see them, but to those like yourself who are on, you know, your TikTok, I see you're like, here we go again.
Yep.
Are we listening, or are we just scrolling?
Yeah.
And at what point do we have to say, hey, we need to listen?
Yeah.
Like, we need to band together.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, you know, in whatever your flavor is, but like, how do we find the ones to listen to what we're saying?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's the benefit of that question, is that it's not one that can necessarily be answered like right away.
Right.
And there's multiple answers to it. You know, and I also think that question, you know, if we break it down to how can I be heard, you know, I think a lot of that goes back into knowing what you want to say and making sure that you are talking to the right people. One of the things that I know I'm doing right now, and this is pretty relevant to kind of what's happening, is, you know, we all know the saying, right? If we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it, right? So I'm a documentary girly. I love watching a good documentary, just sitting down, me and my dog, and he hates it, actually. But I love watching documentaries. So I actually just watched this one on the Vietnam War the other day. And I got about 2 episodes in, and I'm like, okay, cool, so what? Why were we there again? I'm confused. Really reminds me a lot of Iraq, right? Like, why are we here? Look at history repeating itself. But then I had a moment, and I said, well, wait a minute. My dad was like, his team, why did he go to Vietnam? So the next morning, I called my father, and my father will be 70 in September.
Really?
Yep. Called my father, and I said, and my dad, hey, what's up, Amy? What you want? I said, Dad, why didn't you go to Vietnam? He went, good morning. Why didn't I go where? I was like, why did you go to Vietnam? Like, you were like a teenager, like you were 18.
Yeah.
But Nixon actually abolished the draft in January of 1973. My dad turned 18 in September of 73.
Oh.
So while he had to file for selective service, his plan after he graduated from high school was to just enlist, and then that way he got to pick what he wanted to do, and then he would go to war. But because that didn't happen, he was able to go to college. Right. So had Nixon not abolished the draft, my father would have never came out here to Simpson in 1973 to go to college.
Wow.
Yes. And so I say all that to say that one of the things that I'm really starting to actively do is I am focused and I know what's happening now. But I also think for me personally, that gave me a moment to really say to myself, my dad went through a lot just even in those first 18 years, but I also have to take into account all of the things that happened that he has lived through.
Man.
And I don't think I've ever really sat down and asked what those things were like for him. Same with my mother. I've never sat down and actually asked what those things were like for her. And so I think sometimes as all of these things are happening, for me, it's important to chronicle how I feel about these things, just in case anyone wants to know in the future. But in order for me not to repeat past,
Right.
I'm going to start just asking those questions now.
Yeah.
You know, and really starting to learn, because for my parents, all this DEI stuff, this ain't the first rodeo for them.
No. Oh my God. It was just something different.
Yeah, it's literally just rinse, lather, and repeat.
Just a different
Something
name.
totally different. You know what I mean? So, and again, you know, I think as we all really try to think about those things and think about your question, you know, making sure that we're talking to the right people. But I also think, too, one thing, especially that we could be doing in the Black community, is really looking at our elders to say that if there's comparison, how did this make you feel? But also, how did you handle and what did you
Right.
do?
And they have the solution because they had been through it.
Exactly.
So, and I understand that depending on who I ask, like people will sit you down and say, "This is what we did," and we can take that solution and weather the storm.
Exactly. Because I also think, too, you know, one of the things, I was talking to my friend about this the other day. I said, you know, one thing a Black woman gonna do is do it herself. You know.
But is that always the best option?
It all depends on what you want the outcome to be.
Ooh, talk about it. I'm clipping that up too. Ooh.
You know, sometimes these two beans in my head, when they get to rubbing together, I be saying some real stuff. No, but seriously, it depends on the outcome, because, you know, at the end of the day, nobody told Courtney, hey, you should sell candles.
Right.
Nobody told Brianne Ward,
Shout out
you
to
should open up.
Brianne.
Yeah, shout out to Brianne. Nobody told her, oh, you should open up your own mental health and consulting firm. Nobody told me to start a podcast. We just did those things because we saw a need and we were passionate enough about it to make it happen, but also to bring other people in with us as we did it.
Right.
You know, and I feel like that's the missing. I feel like if we look back at 2020 and if we look back at the last 10 years and all of these DEI initiatives, these initiatives were really great, but I think that we as a community, we as a society, and I'm not just talking about Black people, when I'm talking about, and when I say society, I say people of color, and I also say our allies who happen to be white, we needed to, as a collective, make sure that there was true understanding and there was an understanding of longevity of these practices and these laws and these policies and these initiatives. I feel like had we done that, then we wouldn't have seen all these rollbacks.
Right, but it was also in my humble opinion, I feel like that whole time was driven by capitalistic strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
So when something is, in my opinion, if something starts with the capitalistic mindset, it's gonna eventually die once the next trend moves. Oh, we're done with this, or oh, they talk up, everything gone.
And you know, and I think that, you know, again, I feel like capitalism is a double-edged sword. It works when it works, but when it doesn't, look at Target.
When it doesn't look at Target.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, and again, I feel like, you know, any society, regardless if it's a socialist, whatever, they're all going to survive and thrive in different ways. But I feel like, considering the fact that we as Americans know that capitalistic society is always going to be here, I feel like, we need to be doing exactly what we are doing right now for there to be an understanding, because no one ever everyone underestimates the power of the black dollar. And the black dollar is one of the main reasons why Target is not doing so well right now. And I mean, as much as I want to say, I'm boycotting Target, I will say Target is not my first choice. It's not even my second or my third. If I'm going to Target, it's usually like, I'm bored. Let me go in here and see what they got. And they ain't never, and even before all of this, Target, they never really had anything that I really wanted like that. So it is what it is. But what I'm really trying to say is that, now we can paint the picture. Now we can say, you were doing good when you put those policies in place. But 5 years removed, when you took them away, now look at your business.
Now look at you.
Was it worth it? And then you look at all these other businesses, these other black businesses, these other, female-owned businesses, LGBTQ-focused businesses that have pulled away from Target. They are still thriving. But Target,
looking ashy.
All the lotion in the world is still just out here looking bummy. Doesn't make any sense. This is what happens when I hang out with people from Chicago. This is exactly what happens. My best friend is from Chicago every single time.
Looking big ass.
Just big ashy. It just doesn't make any sense.
So I want to ask you. You're giving voice to others. Now you're starting to give voice to yourself. As you start giving your more voice to yourself and telling more about yourself, at what point do you feel like I gave enough of my voice? Will there be that moment where you're like, I think you're always going to keep saying, always going to keep talking, right? But at what point is there, okay, I need to chill for my own sanity? Like, I'm almost giving too much. And I have a homeboy that had the same situation where he had a very successful podcast talking about his stories from corporate America. And he was like, it went from being a place where he can release some stress to like stressful. Yeah, absolutely. And during my first season, man, all gas, no brakes. I did 36 episodes. Now, I recently had someone say, podcasting is easy. And I think that when you have the lens and when you are following a lot of these celebrity podcasters, like, the Pivot podcast or what's that one? That Conversation one, or where or the one with what's it called, New Heights with Travis Kelce and his brother. Yes.
From that angle, podcasting looks easy, but what people don't realize is that those people, they have the success and all of those things that I'm never gonna take away from that. But they have a team of people that are behind them that are doing everything. The key word there is team. Team. I don't have a team.
I wish I could just say, all right, wrap up and just walk out and
just
go
walk
home.
out, right? Or not realize, I've got like 4 episodes that I need to go edit.
Yes.
And schedule and do all these things, right? So I say all that to say that, with my 36 episodes, I did all the scheduling, I did all the editing, I did all the conversations, all the blog posts, I did it all, right? And by the end of my first season, you'll notice that it went from Emily's putting out an episode every week to Emily's putting out 1 episode in 6 weeks. And I think the biggest thing that I learned...
I'm not laughing at you.
Because
I know.
Because right?
Yes.
So I say all that to say that, like, I think that when it comes to podcasting specifically, and like when I need to stop my voice, when I start to get burned out, I have to be okay with saying this is the end of the season.
Right.
Because that's exactly what I did. And I remember I had talked to a friend of mine. She has a podcast, and she had told me about, doing by batch episodes, getting a lot of stuff done ahead of time.
Yep.
But she said, Emily, you need to make sure you have a cutoff. And you need to make sure that you are giving yourself time that you are not podcasting. You're not doing anything. And that is your recharge time. And what started to happen was that as soon as I started winding down season 1, I was already like, okay, I'm starting to feel better. I got 2 more episodes. I got 1 more episode,
Right.
And then now I'm at a point where it's just like, even though I was doing interviews for season 2 during the end of season 1, I feel like I've had a good enough break to where I'm like, okay, I can now start really focusing and putting purpose
Right.
behind my next season. Because I feel like one of the reasons why podcasters get burnt out is because they unintentionally don't put a purpose behind the next season.
100%. And I even started, so that's the reason why I started this podcast.
Yeah.
I have my main podcast, which is the Healthy Project,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was getting so stressful because it went from being this podcast that I started for different reasons to like, okay, I've seen some success. Now it's like work.
Yeah.
Right? And then, which is fine, whatever. But I needed something that I can just do and have fun with, and not have to worry about questions and structure. I'm like, I love podcasting. I love being behind the mic.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to just chill and talk to cool people.
Yeah.
And this is my way of like, so doing the editing for this and all that has been kind of fun because there's no pressure behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, they go into podcasting because they're like, oh, I can talk. I got a personality. Oh, I'm going to get behind this mic. And when that red light come on,
They just, hello? Like, yeah.
And then you don't realize, like you said, all the work behind that. Now, mind you, with the technology now, things have gotten a little easier, but they're still work.
Exactly.
Still work.
Exactly. And I think, too, that once you do recognize the work, I feel like that's one thing. But if you can, when you get to see your work and how it led into the purpose and it sent the message,
100%.
it's worth it.
That's why I respect so many podcasters who are doing it independently. Like, I know the work that goes behind putting out that podcast.
Yeah.
Even if it's just audio, I know you spent some time cutting out them putting the intro and the outro together, putting the descriptions, and I know you took some work.
Yeah, and it takes time, And
it takes time.
I would say that for every podcast episode that I did, and some of them were an hour long, I would say it took from doing the edit, start to finish. If we talked about the booking, the coming up with the questions, the writing the intros for everybody, getting all the information, to recording, to editing, to making sure the captions are right, to creating reels and Instagram posts and blog posts and putting it up and all of those things. Every episode took like 2 hours. 2 hours.
I believe it.
But again, I feel like that if you're going to go into podcasting, just know that, first of all, can anybody do this? Yes. Anybody can do anything.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I feel like the people that have a true purpose and they have a true message that they really want to get out, those are the people that I feel like are going to see success. And I'm not even going to say that they're going to see success in, how much money they make.
Right.
But it's the fact that, if you go out into your community, and I know you've had this, where people are like, oh my God, I love your podcast.
Yeah.
I went to the Zeta, Lambda, Kappa, I hope I said that right. I don't want nobody from the D9 coming after me.
Right.
But anyway, I went to the Black and Gold Ball a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
And the Des Moines chapter NAACP president, she was standing
shout out
with
to
my
Victoria.
friend. Yeah. She said, I'm mad at you. Oh my God, what'd I do? And she said, your podcast, when is it coming back? like, you just left us. And I said, but I told you I'd be back this summer. Like, you know what I mean? But, you know,
But that's fun, though.
That's great.
That's energizing.
Right? You know, like, that's fantastic, you know, and to go out and, you know, to have people, you know, say, you know, Emily, listen to the podcast, or even when, you know, I make a sale on my Etsy shop and things like that, it's like, okay, the message is getting out there.
100%.
Yeah.
It's something about being authentic in your voice. When people support it, it's just like a warm hug.
It is.
It feels so good.
It is.
Yeah, like even the little funky $5 Larry sent me. Shout out to Larry Chitty.
Now you calling him funky.
Look, no, I remember when I saw the notification. Larry's the homie. Larry knows.
He is, yeah.
I sent him a screenshot of him, like, you cheap self.
$5? You know how much? You know what I like, Larry.
Right.
That's all you had to say.
Right. Technically, I'm negative 1 cent because of taxes.
Because of tax. Run me my penny.
Run me.
Run me my penny.
I need that.
I need that back. As much as what is it? In this economy? For real. Yep, exactly.
For real.
Exactly.
Emily, if there's, thank you so much for
Thank you for having
being
me
here. This was so much fun.
This is now the second time that I've been behind, like on the guest side. Because my last episode of season 1, I had a friend interview me.
Oh, I've done that before. That's weird.
It's so weird.
That's weird.
So weird. And then now I have this one. And so, yeah, this has been great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if there was one thing that you can give to somebody that is watching, listening, a piece of advice to encourage them to use their voice for good, hopefully, what would you say to them?
So I'm actually going to quote one of my favorite TV shows in this one. And are you familiar with The Office?
I'm very familiar with The Office. Yes.
Man, that show got me through the pandemic. I love that show. But there's an episode, I believe it's in season 2 or 3, where it's the one where they have like the women's seminar, and Jan sends Michael and the guys like down to the warehouse, and they totally mess it up. But Jan asked Pam what's something that she always wanted to do, and she said go to art school or do art. And Jan's telling her about this program, and Pam's like, oh, I probably can't do it because of my Roy and all these other things. And Jan looks at her and says, there's always a million reasons not to do something. And I've always loved that quote, and it's literally stuck with me since I first saw that episode, probably like 5 years ago now. And I just think that if there's something that you really want to do, if you really feel like there's something that you want to say, again, there's always going to be a million reasons why not to do it.
100%.
But all it takes is one for you to get moving.
Man, that's so real.
My reason, again, 1 minute I said, I don't know what this thing is going to look like to protect Black women and their stories. And it took I had one reason. And I was like, go time. Let's go. And so I would definitely say that, we all too often we stop ourselves. We think we're not good enough, that we don't know anything, or even, we don't have the money to do it or anything like that. And again, those are all reasons not to do something again. And no one ever said that you have to start that thing tomorrow. You could start just by writing that idea out.
For real.
And then just going from there. I think when I bought my microphone, I went to YouTube U, you know where that is?
YouTube University.
And so I had saw all of these podcast videos and about these mics. And these were like $200 and $300 microphones. And I'm like, girl, who got that kind of money? And the economy was kind of good.
Man.
And I literally, I bought a $40 camera that I clip onto my laptop. My microphone was $20.
$20.
Yep.
My first one I paid $40.
Yeah.
I paid $40 from a crackhead on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. Hey, and you know what? All I had to do was plug that stuff in, got on Riverside, paid my little subscription, put it on my credit card.
Done.
Like it's still there. That's totally fine. And go time just literally went from there. You know, and so I would definitely say, you know, if you have that thing, if you have that drive, just start.
Yep.
And starting is writing it down, and then the plan will unfold from there.
I love that. I'm gonna drop the mic there. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, everybody, thank you for listening to Coffee Can't Fix Everything. I am not a therapist, but I want you to have the support. So links to all your mental health therapy or mental health needs will be in the description of this episode. Again, listen, man, coffee can't fix everything, but we're going to have the conversation and break the stigma one coffee at a time. I'll holler at you next time.